Hey, what's up, friends? Welcome back. Another edition of Bleav in Big Ten. I'm fresh off a week in Indianapolis. Rhett Lewis here with you, former IU wide receiver. Was there in Indianapolis for NFL Network and using a lot of my Big Ten connections there as well, which is exciting. Of course, joined as always by co-host of the State of State podcast, a Penn State football show, the great Tom Hannifan. Everybody here with us. And as you can see, we have classed it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This episode of Bleav in Big Ten is outfitted by the good folks at Taylor Stitch. By the way, Taylor Stitch offering 20% off right now to new customers for a first-time purchase. Excellent way to get in on maybe the bomber jacket in the olive dry wax color right here. My man Tom sporting the Jack shirt and the indigo waffle, looking sharp. Tom,
I appreciate the blue considering
well.
my Penn State ties. I appreciate it. It's so comfortable. It's a really nice shirt.
I gotta say, like, not only did I feel really good walking around in my bomber over in Indianapolis, but the function of it was actually quite nice as well, in the frigid temperatures, walking around the city and getting around to too many steak dinners and seeing some folks and getting in and out of Lucas Oil Stadium. So much of that city is indoors with tunnels and connected through tunnels. But when you do have to go outside, it's nice to feel warm and fashionable as well. So we appreciate our good friends at Taylor Stitch for outfitting this episode. Got some more photos that will attach to the post of this episode. That'll just kind of showcase just what a good wear this stuff really is. So Tom, we got a lot to get to on this episode. I spent the week in Indy, as I mentioned, and going to give you a little combine recap, position group by position group, of course, with the Big Ten emphasis. We'll go through some of the best Big Ten performers throughout those position groups, although a lot of the big names didn't actually participate, many of which were Big Teners. That's probably a Penn State thing. Abdul Carter, Winston, didn't want to, okay.
We're okay.
We're okay. Abdul Carter's going number one.
It's dangerous enough walking into a coffee shop in Indianapolis. So imagine what could happen on a football field.
Watch out. Head on a swivel, right? Nobody was messing with me in the bomber jacket. They were like, that is a dude not to be messed with here.
You're built for the long haul, just like Taylor's built.
There it is, my guy. So we'll get into that. And then we also have some breaking news from the college football playoff, which we'll get into as well, Tom.
This is Bleav in Big Ten, which is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA to college basketball to the NHL and UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bleav in Big Ten is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. Let's start off with what you were talking about, some breaking news in regards to the College Football Playoff Management Committee. This was announced earlier on today. The committee has appointed Baylor University Athletics Director Mack Rhoades as Selection Committee Chair for the 2025 football season. That was announced today by Rich Clark, the executive director of the CFP. Rhoades replaces Ward Manuel, the athletics director at the University of Michigan, who served as chair last season. Clark also announced that the management committee has appointed Mark D'Antonio, familiar to Big Ten fans, former head coach at the University of Cincinnati and Michigan State.
That's right.
Damon Evans, athletics director at the University of Maryland, more Big Ten stuff. Ivan Mazel, former sports writer for the Atlanta Constitution, Sports Illustrated, and the Dallas Morning News, Newsday, ESPN, and On3. I've had the chance to speak to Ivan in the past. He is a very smart gentleman. Chris Massaro, athletics director at Middle Tennessee State University. Go
Group
Raiders.
5 inclusion.
And Wesley Walls, which brought me all the way back to my time following Kerry Collins with the Carolina Panthers once upon a time. But Wesley, former All-American tight end from Ole Miss, and they are all now a part of the College Football Committee. So bit of a shakeup there. The movement, however, of Ward Manuel out at the top is very interesting. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I think he'd been there, I want to say for 2 years.
I think
it could have been more. But look, I think, whether he's the chair or not, the selection committee, I think everything's, I don't look at that as a negative in the Big Ten. Obviously, you get Mark D'Antonio, who does kind of come from, a little bit more of the old school feel of college football,
Yes.
having, been gone from Michigan State now for a while. You think about, things that he would prioritize, I don't know, earning it instead of, being the best team on paper, earning an opportunity to be in the college football playoff. I feel pretty secure in that sort of situation. No disrespect intended to anyone who feels like earning it is no longer something that should be a part of the college football playoff calculus. But I think that person is wrong. And then Damon Evans, obviously from Maryland, I think is a great one. They've had, just like overall has done a phenomenal job with Maryland athletics, and then has had some great consistency with Mike Loxley, now as the head coach coming back for another year with some talent there. Wesley Walls, you know him from Carolina. I knew him before Carolina when he was with the New Orleans Saints, and was actually, he might have caught passes from Kerry Collins in New Orleans as well.
Oh gosh,
because after Kerry left Carolina, he went to New Orleans. Anyway,
you'd have to go. That's a deep dive for another day.
Yeah, it is. We'll go back to Pro Football Reference and look at the overlap there. But a great tight end from Ole Miss. So you got some SEC representation there. But I think two prominent, one current administrator, one former college football playoff, caliber head coach, and Mark D'Antonio with Big Ten ties. Like I feel pretty good about this.
The move at the top, Mac Rhodes representing a Big 12 team in Baylor.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Do you feel like that's in any way the committee being like, look, we just handed over nearly complete control to the Big Ten and the SEC?
Tony Petitti, yeah, and obviously to Greg Sankey, yeah.
Yeah, is it kind of the committee as a whole being like, we need to at least acknowledge that other conferences exist?
It does feel like to me that there is some semblance.
Not to cut you off, that's nothing against Mac Rhodes as an individual.
No,
the ability to do the job, but the representation is important.
I agree with you. Yes. And it does feel like, all right, especially if we start expanding this thing and we're talking about, 4 automatic bids for Big Ten and SEC, and 2 for the Big 12, 2 for the ACC, however the whole thing ends up going. It does feel like to have some oversight at the top, right, from a non-Big Ten or SEC conference makes some sense for one, even maybe more so as a concession, but you'd like to have some checks and balances there as well. And I think that serves both purposes.
To have Ivan Maisel on there, I know there are people out there who hate the idea of anybody that has not played the game. That's a concern. I get that, but as I mentioned, I've spoken to Ivan in the past, and I think the world of his body of work and has been around the game for so long. I think it's important to have a variety of perspectives when it comes to the College Football Playoff Committee. You want athletic directors, you want former head coaches, you want former coaches, period. You want former players. I think it's good to have that collection. And Ivan's as good a representative as any from the media space. What say you?
Yeah, no question. And I think that's fine too, to have, an outside kind of thought process, right? An outside opinion, from like, let's just say, as opposed to, on the internal, college football, playoff football complex, right? Like I think it's okay. Again, you're trying to have diversity of opinion and diversity of experience around the game. And I think that's what this does.
Speaking of diversity, that's what the NFL Combine is all about. Every possible position, conference, player, body type,
test.
Your hand size can grow at the college football. Oh my God, I didn't realize your one finger went that way.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate way to catch a.
When did that happen?
Don't catch footballs like this over the middle. It's not advised, generally speaking. But yeah, this was courtesy of my friend and quarterback Matt LaVecchio, who throw some pretty good RPMs behind his ball. And I don't know what happened. I crunched down on the ball before it arrived, and just. That's all right.
For those of you listening, check out our YouTube channel. And
you're going to need to know
how Rhett Lewis has something in common with Brian Baldinger.
That's
but
right.
Speaking of Baldy, he loves the Combine. So does Rhett Lewis. So what was your overall takeaway, all kidding aside, about some of the off the field antics that went on at the Combine? But still, this was just a different feel to the Combine. You kind of poked at it. Is that no Abdul Carter, no Travis Hunter. A lot of the top players that everybody was hoping to see were sitting out the combine, either opting to do more work at their pro days or realizing that they have more to lose by doing anything at this point than they do by actually going out there and doing the measurables.
Okay, yeah, and that was I think I go back. I'm like, gosh, did this many guys, top guys last year or the year before, did they also not? I think ultimately it's about right about what we end up seeing. A couple of the top guys at each position decide that they would prefer to have all their athletic testing done at their pro day in a more comfortable, suitable environment, whatever you want to call it. I think that is a fair thought process, and it is their choice. And they have that advice and that kind of group think with their agents and parents and maybe even coaches, to kind of go through all that and see what's ultimately best for you, the draft prospect, because you are not an NFL player yet, and you are trying to paint yourself in the best possible light to make that dream a reality. So yeah, Abdul Carter, top edge rusher, didn't go. A bunch of the top D tackles didn't go. Both the guys from Michigan, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, didn't go. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, who's going to be up there, didn't end up participating. You mentioned Travis Hunter, who you could consider as the top wideout and corner, did not participate there. Will Johnson from Michigan, also a top corner, did not participate. Top two quarterbacks for most people's accounts did not participate. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, but were out there supporting their teammates. Cam Ward was warming up with his buddy Xavier Restrepo, wide receiver from Miami. So they were out there. And then same thing for Shedeur. Was super excited when his was it Jimmy Horn, I Bleav, from Colorado, the receiver, went out there and ran a nice time at his 40-yard dash, went out and congratulated. So he was out there support. They did everything. You met with the media, did all the interviews, had most of them had their measurements taken, which again is another piece of the process here. And so they went through that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was, Tep McMillan from Arizona did not participate, will not participate in anything leading up to the draft, which I find kind of interesting. By the way, your former Penn Stater, Keandre Lambert-Smith, had a nice time. 4.37
quite well
from Auburn. Now finished up at Auburn and is there. So we'll go through some of these position groups, and I'll give you a Big Ten player or two who I thought stood out in that group.
Well, you touched on it a little bit with defensive tackle, and you've heard so much conversation. I know it's maybe not the sexiest thing, but defensive tackle this year is far and away as deep as it's ever been, maybe in the history of the draft. And that there are some people saying there are anywhere from 10 to 24 defensive tackles that reasonably could go in the first 2 days. It's unbelievable. So staying with the defensive line, because you did just hit on a few defensive tackle names. So I'll lump in every position there at defensive line. Who are some Big Ten people that we mentioned some of the obvious ones, but who are some guys that stood out in your opinion?
Derek Harmon took advantage. And that's the other thing. Just to kind of go back and finish the thought on the players who didn't participate, it doesn't necessarily hurt them in the eyes of NFL evaluators, right? But what it does is it allows the guys who do participate to take a jump, right? To have a moment to shine in the spotlight. And I thought with Graham, Nolan, and Grant all out on the D tackle class, that Derek Harmon, showed up and ran a 4.95 40 at over 300 pounds. And let me get the exact weight for you, 313 pounds. As a guy who lived in the backfield at Oregon, and ran a 1.74 10-yard split, which is an important one, right? That's the first 10 yards of the 40-yard dash that judges your explosiveness, your get off. Like that, it all fits. And so now you're going to see Derek Harmon, who I would say is a top 30 prospect, maybe inch a little bit closer into the top half of the first round because of, the opportunity to stand out above the rest. So again, Oregon, Big Ten, Derek Harmon from the D tackles stood out to me on that front. And then CJ West from Indiana at 316 pounds, running one of the fastest 40s from that group, moving really well. You combine that with an excellent East-West Shrine Bowl, and he's acing the process. These are all things, these are all ingredients you throw into the gumbo pot. That's how we build a draft prospect, right? We're stirring it. We build the roux, we're stirring it. We throw in the okra and the shrimp and maybe a little bit of sausage, and the spices, little Tony Chachere's. And by the end of the thing, you've got a dang tasty prospect right here. And that's where we're at, with a guy like CJ West. So those two guys from the D tackle class, if we're looking at the defensive end, like the edge rusher types, obviously Abdul Carter did not work out. Bunch of these guys, Mykel Williams from Georgia, Mike Green from Marshall, Did not work out. The aces of the group are, non-Big Ten players. Shamar Stewart from A&M, James Pierce from Tennessee ran 4.4, which was incredible, with what he does.
Freak.
Jack Sawyer didn't run the 40, but I thought looked really good in some of the field drills. Jalen Tuimoloau, his buddy from Ohio State, didn't really do anything. So kind of working his way back. Hopefully we get to see them, at the pro day, put up some of those athletic numbers. But I'll give you a comparison here. Just on height, weight, and measurables. 6'4.25" for Jack Sawyer, 260 pounds, 77 1/8 inch wingspan, and a hand size just shy of 10 inches. So 9 3/4. They measure that from pinky to thumb. That's how that gets done. These numbers stood out to me. 6'4", 266 pounds, 77 1/8 inch wing also, and a hand size of 9 7/8. So again, almost 10 inch hand. Those are the numbers of the NFL sack leader this year, Trey Hendrickson. So like if you're painting height, weight, frame, and we'll see on speed and measurables, but that's an area where Hendrickson was not, at the top of his class. You're like, okay, I can start to picture this for Jack. That's a pretty favorable comparison. So again, I thought those guys did a really nice job.
That's a great comp. I love those body composition, side by sides. That really helps put everything into perspective, because so often it's like, well, he reminds me of so-and-so. It's like,
right.
What is
but
he
how and what?
like?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's move to linebacker, a position that unfortunately over the years has just kind of been devalued in the National Football League, but it does feel like it's kind of making a comeback. And I'll point selfishly to my Philadelphia Eagles and what Zach Bond was able to do this past year.
Yeah.
I mean, showing tremendous versatility, and that the days of the bludgeoning middle linebacker are dying, and you do need a very nimble, capable middle outside linebacker presence. Weak, strong, doesn't matter what you're looking at, but they need to be able to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Off the ball backers do need to do everything. And I think, a guy like Jalen Walker, who won the Butkus Award, is now kind of being considered more of an edge rusher because of how effective he can be rushing the passer from the second level. Or, you drop him down onto the line of scrimmage, and that creates some real issues for opposing offensive lines. I'll give you a couple of linebacker superlatives from Big Ten with Big Ten ties. Tallest linebacker measured at the combine from Rutgers, Tyreem Powell, 6'4.5", so big, tall linebacker at the second level. Fastest linebacker, UCLA's Kane Madrano, who ran 4.46. Now, here's the interesting thing with Kane. He had a really nice field workout too, as you might expect. He's about 220 pounds. But when scouts came through UCLA in the spring of last year before the fall, they had him at like 203, 204. Not thick enough to hold up at the linebacker spot. Again, he's a former wide receiver. So like all that stuff kind of makes sense for him. And then he's got great coverage instincts. He gets his hands on the football. And then you see him run 4.46, but putting 20 pounds onto his frame from, spring to spring, calendar year. And now everyone's like, all right, how can we use this really athletic, fast guy with ball skills type of linebacker piece, hybrid role, maybe certainly on core 4 special teams, he'll be excellent. So I thought that was pretty cool. Jay Higgins, unfortunately, was the slowest linebacker out there from Iowa in terms of 40-yard dash, ran 4.82, but he had the fastest 3-cone drill out of the linebacker. So like you can say, all right, long speed, not great. We're not going to probably have him at, a Tampa 2 middle linebacker trying to cover the middle of the field, against the number 3 wide receiver in the slot. Probably not going to be that place where he's going to go.
Put him in a phone
now
booth. He's deadly.
You can see short area quickness. Exactly, Tom. So that's something to think about there. Again, Tyreem Powell, longest arms, which shouldn't really surprise anybody if he's the tallest dude out there, 34 5/8 inch. That's really long for a linebacker. And then I want to say, just kind of looking at some of the other backs there, I think those are the guys that really kind of stood out to me. Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, who I think is one of the top 3 linebackers overall in this class, didn't do a whole lot. The only thing he did was the vert, and he had the second highest vert of any of the linebackers. He didn't do any of the other athletic testing, but he is the most instinctual linebacker that I believe in this class, and I think he is a second-round pick all day long.
I want to jump to the offensive side of the ball here as
Yeah.
we've just got a limited amount of time left. I think we have to talk about quarterbacks.
Yes.
What quarterbacks from the Big Ten do you think have a legitimate chance of it? I mean, what round doesn't really matter, but at least seeing success in the National Football League?
Yeah, I thought Max Brosmer did a nice job from the Big
Yes.
Ten. I thought he was, he will be one of the most prepared players regardless at any position, but certainly of the quarterbacks. He is maniacal in his preparation. I thought he threw the ball pretty well. I know he wanted a couple of throws back. He can look a little rigid and a little mechanical at times, but he's got a good physical frame. He can run the ball a little bit if you want him to. So I thought Max Brosmer did a lot to help himself. Let's see. Curtis Rourke from Indiana was invited, didn't get a chance to participate, still recovering from knee surgery. And then I'll throw the tight ends in there too. Terrence Ferguson ran the fastest 40 from Oregon. Thought he was really helped himself because the top guys, again, Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, did not work out. But I thought Ferg might have closed the gap a little bit with what he did on the field in the 40.
Harold Fannin Jr. outside the Big Ten, obviously from Bowling Green, was somebody who was neck and neck with Warren in terms of competing for the Mackey. And Fannin, not the greatest combine, it sounds like, but is going to have to see if he transitions. Looking at other positions, wide receiver and running back, who stood out to you?
Let's go with running backs. I thought Quinshon Judkins might have helped himself more than any player at any position with his athletic testing. I'll go through some of his numbers here real quick with, let's see if I can pull that up from Quinshon. Yeah. So he measured in at just under 6 foot, 5'11" and some change, 221 pounds. So about 20 pounds heavier than Travion Henderson. And Quinshon runs 4.48. I think Travion was up there at 4.43. So if you're talking about Travion as home run hit type of speed, and you do see that on tape more so than you see it with Judkins, but now you're starting to it's really starting to paint a picture that Judkins maybe more than just for second down. He was natural catching the football out of the backfield. Like that's something that gets me really excited about what he could do. So now those two guys are even closer in my mind, Henderson and Judkins. Unfortunately for Caleb Johnson, did not have the speediest of workouts. He ran north of 4.5, closer to 4.6, in fact, out of Iowa. But again, you see what he can do on tape. Jordan James, a pretty good day for himself. He ran 4.55. Probably like to see that a little faster, but still had a pretty good field workout. As far as the wide receivers go, if we pull up some of my favorite guys, Emeka Egbuka didn't do anything. So he will run at his pro day, and we're hearing he could run somewhere in the 4.3s. So Matthew Golden's time of 4.29 from Texas maybe won't feel all that far off once Egbuka puts a 40 on tape. Tez Johnson.
Underwhelming. Really underwhelming.
4 pounds and running a 4.5 is not the combination you want, unfortunately.
It's not what I expected at all. Right. Watching him play, he seemed like he could fly.
But you watch the 3-cone drill, he runs 6.65, which is incredible. And you're like, okay, well, that's who he is. Yeah. He is a guy who won't let anybody else get their hands on him because he's so cat quick. And there's a lot to like in his game. It's just like the long speed did not quite translate. Maybe just had a bad day too. We'll see what he runs at his pro day.
Finally, offensive line, not to gloss over the defensive backs, but we have time.
Yeah, I thought Ariante Ursary was really good. Ran fast at over 300 pounds. And he's tall, ran sub 4 or sub 5. So I thought that was really good for him. And then I'm trying to think of some of the other guys. Marcus Bowe had a really good field workout from Purdue. So those are just a couple. And then, Josh Connerly, I think will be up there. Donovan Jackson, muscled through his workout. He looked like something was bothering him, but he's going to be off the board very quickly in the second round, in my opinion.
There's a lot of talent coming out of the Big Ten headed for the NFL draft. So we're going to keep an eye on all this. And obviously a lot of players that did not take part in the NFL Combine, so they will have their pro days. And if they don't choose to do that, getting ready for the draft itself so that they can go to the best landing spot possible. He is Rhett Lewis. I am Tom Hannifan. A big thank you to Taylor Stitch. Check them out on social media at TaylorStitch. Very important. They have outfitted us today on Bleav in Big Ten. A huge thanks to Taylor Stitch. He's Rhett. I'm Tom. Join us next time on Bleav in Big Ten.